I woke up with stitches in my side and a brutal fact in my throat. My newborn had been held that night, just not by my parents, while I fought to breathe. My mother was too busy to drive 15 minutes to the NICU, and my father let her be. The worst part was not that they chose themselves over me again, it was that this time, their choice came with a baby's name attached. My name is Violet Parker, and the first thing I realized when I opened my eyes was that the silence in the room was heavy enough to crush me. I was 34 years old. I was supposed to be in a birthing suite with soft lighting and a playlist of instrumental folk music I had spent 3 weeks curating. I was supposed to be holding my husband's hand while we counted contractions. Instead, I was staring at a water-stained ceiling tile in what looked like a recovery bay, and my body felt like it had been dismantled and put back together by someone who had lost the instructions. There was a tube coming out of the side of my chest. That was the first specific sensation I could isolate. It felt like a thick, cold snake living between my ribs, and every time I took a shallow breath, it scraped against bone. My abdomen was on fire, a searing horizontal line of pain that told me exactly how my daughter had entered the world. I tried to sit up, but the machines around me screamed in protest, and a nurse was at my side in less than 2 seconds. She was older, with tired eyes and hands that felt impossibly cool against my feverish skin. "Lay back, honey," she said, her voice dropping into that specific register nurses use when things are bad but manageable. "You have 3 fractured ribs and a chest tube. You are recovering from an emergency cesarean section. You need to stay still." I ignored the pain in my ribs. I ignored the throbbing headache that pulsed behind my eyes like a second heartbeat. I forced my dry tongue to peel away from the roof of my mouth to ask the only question that mattered. "Where is my daughter?" The nurse hesitated for a fraction of a second, and in that pause, my heart stopped. I prepared myself for the end of my life. I prepared myself to hear that the crash had taken her. "She is stable," the nurse said quickly, seeing the panic rising in my eyes. "She is in the NICU. She is very small. Violet, she was born at 37 weeks, but the trauma of the accident caused some distress. She is on a ventilator right now just to help her breathe. But she is stable. She is alive. Alive." The word washed over me, bringing a fresh wave of tears that burned my cheeks. "I want to see her," I rasped. "Not yet," the nurse said firmly. "You lost a lot of blood. Your vitals are still rocky. We need to get you stable first." I turned my head to the side, fighting the stiffness in my neck. The room was empty. There was a chair in the corner, upholstered in ugly blue vinyl, and it was completely vacant. "Where is Grant?" I asked. The nurse checked the monitor, adjusting a fluid line. "Your husband is still in Chicago. He has been calling the nurses' station every 15 minutes. The storm systems in the Midwest grounded all flights out of O'Hare. He is trying to rent a car to drive back, but it is going to take him at least 12 hours, maybe more with the weather." I closed my eyes. Grant was stranded. He was hundreds of miles away, likely terrified, likely screaming at an airline agent or gripping a steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. It was not his fault. He had left for a 2-day conference because we thought we had 3 weeks left. We thought we had time. But I was not alone in this state. My parents lived in this town. My parents lived 15 minutes away from Ridgewell Medical Center. They lived in the house I helped pay for. They drove the car I paid the insurance on. I looked at the empty blue chair again. "Did my parents come?" I asked. The room went quiet. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor seemed to get louder, filling the space where the answer should have been. The nurse busied herself with my IV bag, flicking the plastic tubing with her finger. "I asked you if my parents came," I repeated, my voice stronger this time, fueled by a dread that was colder than the chest tube. The nurse stopped moving. She looked down at me, and her expression softened into something that looked excruciatingly like pity. "Your husband called them," she said gently. "When he got the news, he called them immediately. He told us he spoke to your mother. He asked them to come be with the baby until he could get here. And they did not come. Violet," the words hung in the air, simple and devastating. They did not come. I stared at the ceiling tile again. I tried to process the logistics of it. 15 minutes. It was a 15-minute drive. 10 minutes if you hit the green lights on Main Street. My mother was retired. My father worked part-time at a hardware store, but it was a Tuesday night. They were home. They were sitting on the leather sectional sofa I had bought them for their anniversary last year. Maybe they are on their way, I whispered, though I knew I was lying to myself. The nurse sighed. She looked like she was debating whether to tell me the rest, but she decided I deserved the truth. We called them again an hour ago, she said softly. We needed consent for a minor procedure for the baby, and since your husband was driving and losing cell signal, we tried your parents as the next of kin. Your mother said she was busy. She said she could not handle the hospital environment right now. Busy. I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest, but it turned into a sob that rattled my broken ribs. My mother was busy. My daughter was fighting for breath in a plastic box down the hall, and my mother was busy. A soft knock on the door broke the tension. A young woman poked her head in. She was wearing a different color scrubs than the nursing staff, a soft lilac color. She looked exhausted but kind. "Hi, Violet?" she asked. I nodded, unable to speak. "My name is Tessa Lane," she said. Stepping fully into the room, "I am a NICU cuddler and support aide. The charge nurse called me in a few hours ago." She walked over to the side of my bed. She did not look at me with pity. She looked at me with solidarity. "I just wanted you to know that your daughter has not been alone," Tessa said. "I have been with her for the last 4 hours. I held her hand through the incubator port while they got her settled. I read to her. She knows someone is there. She is a fighter. Violet, she has a grip like a little wrestler." I looked at this stranger, this woman I had never met, who was likely paid barely above minimum wage, or perhaps was just volunteering her time. She had left her home in the middle of the night to hold the hand of a baby she did not know. "Thank you," I whispered, the tears finally spilling over, hot and fast. "Thank you for being there when nobody else was." Tessa squeezed my hand. Her skin was warm. "That is my job," she said. "But she needs her mama as soon as you can get down there." When Tessa left, the silence rushed back in. But this time it felt different. It felt toxic. I reached for the bedside table, my fingers trembling as I grasped my phone. The screen was cracked in the corner, a souvenir from the crash. But it lit up. 17 missed calls from Grant, 32 text messages from Grant, 3 missed calls from my best friend, Sarah, a text from my boss asking if I was okay. I scrolled down. Nothing from Mom, nothing from Dad, nothing. I opened our family group chat. The last message was from me, sent 2 days ago. "Doctor says everything looks great. Baby is dropping. Getting ready." There was no response to that message either. My thumb hovered over the Instagram icon. I knew I should not do it. I knew it would be like swallowing glass, but I had to know what busy looked like. I opened the app. The first circle at the top of the feed was my younger sister, Blair, who was 26 and still finding herself, Blair, whose rent I had covered 3 times last year because she just needed a little help to get back on her feet. I tapped the circle. The story had been posted 2 hours ago, roughly the same time I was being wheeled out of surgery, roughly the same time the nurse was calling my mother to ask for help. It was a boomerang video, clinking glasses, brightly colored cocktails with little umbrellas. The background was the patio of that expensive new bistro downtown. The Azure. The caption was written in a swirly, carefree font. "Best weekend ever with the fam. Celebrating life." I tapped to the next slide. It was a photo. My mother, Janice, was laughing, her head thrown back, a martini glass in her hand. She was wearing the silk blouse I had bought her for Christmas. My father, Dale, was in the background, nursing a beer and looking relaxed. Blair was in the foreground, making a duck face at the camera. They were celebrating life, while I was bleeding out on a table, while their granddaughter was alone in a room full of machines. They were 15 minutes away. I put the phone down on my chest. I could feel the heat radiating from the device. For a moment, I could not breathe. It wasn't the chest tube. It wasn't the fractured ribs. It was the realization that hit me harder than the truck that had run the red light. This was not an accident. This was a pattern. My mind flashed back, unbidden, to the transfers, the monthly transfers. $2,000 on the first of every month, $500 here for a car repair, $300 there for a medical bill that I never saw the paperwork for. I had been funding that patio dinner. I had paid for the drinks in their hands. I had bought the clothes on their backs. For 9 years, I had been the safety net. I had been the retirement plan. I had been the good daughter. I had convinced myself that their constant need was just bad luck, that their reliance on me was a form of closeness. But you do not abandon the people you love when they are dying. You do not leave a newborn baby alone in a hospital to go drink cocktails. The phone buzzed against my sternum. It was Grant again. I swiped to answer, putting it on speaker because I did not have the strength to hold it to my ear. Violet? Grant's voice was broken. He sounded like he had been crying for hours. Violet. Oh my God. Are you okay? Did you see her? Is she okay? I am alive. Grant, I said, my voice sounding hollow and strange to my own ears. She is in the NICU. I am coming, he sobbed. I am driving. It is snowing, but I am driving. I will be there. I promise. I am so sorry I am not there. It is okay, I said. You are trying. Did your parents get there? Grant asked, his voice tightening. I called them. Violet. I begged them. Your mom acted weird. She said there was a lot of noise, but I told her it was life or death. I told her to go to Maisie. I looked at the blue chair again. I looked at the dark window reflecting my own pale, battered face. They are not here. Grant. What? They did not come. Grant went silent. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the road and the static of the connection. They refused her. I whispered, and saying it out loud made it real. The words tasted like ash. They refused our baby. Grant. I could hear Grant inhale sharply. A sound of pure rage that I had never heard from him before. But before he could speak, before he could scream, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a building that has already collapsed. There is no more noise when the destruction is finished. There is just dust. Just get here safely. I said, Tessa is with her. She is a volunteer. She is safe. I love you. Grant said, I love you so much. I hung up. I was alone in the room. My hands were shaking violently now, but not from shock, from clarity. I unlocked my phone again. I did not go to Instagram this time. I opened my banking app. Face ID logged me in. The numbers flashed on the screen. Checking, savings, and then the scheduled transfers tab. There it was. Set to go out in 3 days. The first of the month. Transfer to Mom, Dad, mortgage support. Amount, $2,500. I stared at it. For years. I had looked at that line item as a badge of honor. It was proof that I was successful. Proof that I was a dutiful child who took care of her family. Now, looking at it in the harsh fluorescent light of the hospital room, with the pain of my severed abdominal muscles throbbing in time with my pulse, it looked like something else entirely. It looked like a trap I had built for myself. I had paid for the gas in the car they didn't drive to see me. I had paid for the data plan they used to upload photos of their party while my daughter lay alone. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. $2,500. It was not just money. It was my blood. It was the hours I worked overtime. It was the vacations Grant and I did not take. It was the house we did not buy so that they could keep theirs. And the return on investment was zero. I lay back against the pillow, the phone heavy in my hand, the chest tube scraped against my ribs. A sharp reminder of reality. I was not a daughter to them. I was a bank account. And you do not visit a bank account in the hospital. You just wait for the deposit to clear. I stared at the cancel button on the screen. My finger hovered over it. The old Violet, the Violet from yesterday, would have been terrified. She would have worried about their mortgage. She would have worried about their feelings. She would have worried about being a bad daughter. But the Violet from yesterday had died on a wet road in an intersection. The woman in the bed was someone else. She was Maisie's mother, and Maisie's mother was done paying for her own abuse. I did not press the button yet. I just stared at it, letting the hate warm me up, letting it replace the blood I had lost. I would wait. I would wait until I was strong enough to do it right. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I listened to the machines beep, and I planned to understand why I lay in that hospital bed staring at my bank account like it was a loaded weapon. You have to understand who I was 9 years ago. I was 25 years old. I was not the hardened, surgically scarred woman calculating betrayal in a recovery room. I was optimistic. I was eager. I had just landed my first real job as a junior analyst at Northgate Compliance Solutions. I remember holding the offer letter in my hands and feeling the paper stock, thick and creamy, thinking it felt like safety, for the first time in my life. I was not just scraping by. I had a salary. I had benefits. I had a future that looked like a steady, upward climb. I had grown up watching my parents juggle bills like chainsaws, always one bad month away from disaster, and I promised myself I would be different. I was going to be the one who broke the cycle. I did not know then that the cycle does not break just because you make money. It just gets more expensive. It started 3 weeks after my first paycheck cleared. I was sitting at my new desk, arranging my pens, feeling professional and adult. When my phone rang, it was my mother, Janice. She was crying. It was not a soft cry. It was a jagged, terrified sound that made me stand up so fast I knocked my chair into the cubicle wall. "Mom?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What is it? Is everyone okay?" "It is your father," she sobbed. My stomach dropped. I thought of car accidents. I thought of heart attacks. "He is sick. Violet, he has been feeling awful for weeks, and the doctor says he needs tests. Specialists. We do not have the insurance for it. We do not have the money." I gripped the phone tighter. "How much?" I asked. She hesitated, blowing her nose loudly. "We are already behind on the mortgage. Honey, if we pay for the tests, we lose the house. If we pay the mortgage, your father, well, I do not know what happens to your father." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. She was presenting me with a choice: my father's health or their home. But it wasn't really a choice. It was a demand wrapped in a tragedy. "I have money," I said. The words came out before I even thought about them. It was instinct. It was the training I had received since childhood. Make yourself useful, and you will be loved. I can help. "Mom, how much do you need?" $2,000, she whispered. "Just to cover the mortgage and the first round of deductibles. Just for this month. Until we get back on our feet. $2,000. I did the math in my head. That was a huge chunk of my take-home pay. That was my rent, my student loan payment, and my grocery budget. But I had savings from my signing bonus. I could do it. I could be the hero. "Okay," I said, feeling a strange mix of nausea and pride. "I will transfer it today. Thank you, Violet. Oh, thank you. You are saving us." Then came the hook, the part that should have made me run. But instead, it just pulled me deeper into the net. "Violet, listen to me," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Do not tell your father." "Why?" "He would be ashamed," she said. "You know how proud he is. If he knew his little girl was bailing him out, it would break his heart. Let me handle the money. Let him think I made it work. It will be our secret, our secret." It felt like intimacy. It felt like my mother and I were partners, guarding the fragile ego of the man we both loved. I agreed. I wired the money that afternoon. $2,000, gone. I waited for the feeling of relief. I waited for my mother to call me back the next day. Calmer, telling me the tests were scheduled, telling me the house was safe. She did not call. When I called her a week later, she sounded breezy, casual. When I asked about Dad's tests, she was vague. "Oh, the doctor thinks it might just be stress." She said, "We are monitoring it." "And the mortgage?" I asked. Paid. She said, thanks to you, this is what good daughters do. Violet, they look out for their family. That was it. No weeping gratitude, no promise to pay me back, just a validation of my role. I was the good daughter. The transaction was complete. I tried to put it out of my mind. I told myself it was a one-time emergency. Life happens. But then I went home for Thanksgiving a month later. I drove into the driveway of the house I had just saved. I expected to see a somber home, a place recovering from a near-miss financial collapse. Instead, I saw a new patio set sitting on the front porch. It was intricate wicker with plush, cream-colored cushions. It looked expensive. It looked brand new. I stood on the lawn, staring at it. My stomach churned. "Mom," I said, when she came to the door to hug me. Where did this come from? She followed my gaze and waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, that old thing? I found it at an estate sale. Practically gave it away. It cheers the place up, do you not think?" I wanted to ask to see the receipt. I wanted to ask how they had cash for estate sales when they needed my money to keep the roof over their heads 4 weeks ago, but I didn't. I didn't want to ruin the holiday. I didn't want to be the bad daughter who counted pennies while her father was supposedly sick. Then I saw my sister, Blair. Blair was 21 then, living at home, working a few shifts a week at a boutique and spending the rest of her time curating her social media presence. She came bounding down the stairs, looking glowing and healthy. "Look!" she squealed, shoving a designer handbag in my face. It was not a knockoff. I knew the brand. It retailed for at least $400. Mom got it for me for getting through midterms. Blair beamed. I looked at Janice. She was busy stirring gravy on the stove, her back to me. I thought things were tight. I said, my voice tight. Janice turned around, her expression hardening just a fraction. "We have to celebrate the victories. Violet, you cannot live in misery just because things are tough. Besides, Blair needs to look professional for her interviews." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I looked at the patio set. I looked at the bag. I looked at my father, who was watching football in the living room, looking perfectly healthy, eating a bowl of expensive macadamia nuts. Maybe I was being selfish. That was the thought that crept in. Maybe I did not understand how household finances worked. Maybe they really had squeezed every dime to get me through college. And now it was my turn to give back. I was making good money now. Why shouldn't they have nice things? So I let it go, but the calls did not stop. 3 months later, it was the water heater. Violet. It flooded the basement. Janice cried, "The mold will kill your father with his immune system the way it is." $1,500. 2 months after that, it was a gap in their car insurance coverage after a fender bender. "They will take your father's license. Violet. He cannot work without a car." $800. Then it was urgent debt that she couldn't explain over the phone, but was apparently threatening enough to keep her awake at night. It became a rhythm, a dark, expensive heartbeat underlying my life. Every time I saw a Northgate deposit hit my account, I braced myself for the extraction. My savings stayed flat. My student loans barely budged. I was making $70,000 a year, but I was living like I made 30. Then I met Grant. Grant was an engineer. He was logical, kind, and he saw the world in structural loads and breaking points. We had been dating for 6 months when things got serious enough to talk about the future. We were sitting in his apartment, drinking cheap wine. He had a spreadsheet open on his laptop. He liked spreadsheets. I was looking at buying a place. Grant said, turning the screen toward me, "Nothing fancy, just a townhome. But if we are going to be together long term, I want to know where we stand. I want to build something with you, Violet." He showed me his savings, his retirement contributions. It was impressive. He was disciplined. Then he looked at me. "I have noticed you never talk about buying a house," he said gently, "and you drive that old sedan that breaks down every winter. You have a great job. Violet, where is it all going?" I felt the flush of shame creep up my neck. I could not tell him. I had promised my mother, "Don't tell your father. He'd be ashamed." The secrecy had metastasized. Now, it wasn't just hiding it from Dad. It was hiding it from everyone. If I told Grant, he would do the math. He would ask questions I could not answer. I have student loans. I lied. Big ones. And the cost of living in the city is high. Grant looked at me. He had that way of looking at things, like he was inspecting a bridge for hairline fractures. He saw the crack, but he did not press on it yet. Okay, he said slowly, but we need to plan. You need to pay yourself first. Violet, you cannot build a future on leftovers. I nodded, feeling sick, because I knew my future was not mine. My future was already mortgaged to my parents' present. A week later, Janice called again. This time, she did not cry. She sounded exhausted, beaten down. It is just too much to manage. Violet, she said, asking you every month. It is humiliating for me. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe she was going to stop. Maybe they were going to sell the house and downsize like I had suggested a dozen times. So, she continued, I was thinking, to make it easier on everyone, maybe we just set it up as a regular thing, just to cover the basics, so I do not have to call you in a panic and ruin your workday. A regular thing, like a subscription service, a subscription to having parents. How much? I asked, my voice dull. Just the $2,000. She said, that covers the mortgage and the utilities. It keeps us safe. Violet, it keeps your father from stressing out. You know stress is the silent killer. I looked at the pile of work on my desk. I looked at the picture of Grant I had just framed. I was so tired. I was so tired of the emergency calls, the adrenaline spikes, the guilt trips. If I automated it, I reasoned, I could stop thinking about it. It would just be a bill, like rent, like taxes. I could buy my peace of mind for $2,000 a month. Okay, I said. I logged into my banking app. I navigated to the transfer section. I entered their account number. I knew it by heart now. I typed in the amount, $2,000. I selected the frequency, monthly, and then I checked the box that sealed my fate, the box that said, until canceled. I stared at the screen. Mom, I said, I am setting it up now, but this is temporary, right? Just until Dad gets his pension sorted? Just until Blair moves out? Of course, honey, she said. Her voice was light again. Happy. Of course. Just for a little while. You are a good girl. Violet, I do not know what we would do without you. I clicked confirm. The screen flashed green. Success. Recurring transfer scheduled. I did not know it then. But I had just signed a contract that would last for 9 years. I had just agreed to fund the girls' nights and the spa days and the patio furniture and the illusion of their middle-class success. I put the phone down and stared at the dark screen. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but it was replaced by a cold, hollow feeling in my gut. I never touched that setting again. I let it run. I let it bleed me dry. Month after month, year after year, while I told myself I was helping, while I told myself it was love, I did not know that I was not paying for their survival. I was paying for them to forget I existed, right up until the moment I needed them most. The $2,000 became the floor, not the ceiling. That was the first rule of the new economy I was living in. For the first year, the automatic transfer sat there like a silent roommate, eating its share of my income without complaint. But silence in my family was never a sign of peace. It was just the deep breath before the request. It started with inflation. That was the word Janice used. She said the price of eggs was up. She said the heating oil was criminal. She said the property taxes had been reassessed, and the county was bleeding them dry. I was 28 then. 3 years into the arrangement, I had received a promotion at Northgate, moving from a cubicle to an office with a window that looked out over the parking lot. My salary had bumped up significantly, but my lifestyle had remained frozen in a state of suspended adolescence. I still drove the same rattling sedan. I still shopped the clearance rack. When Janice called to say that $2,000 just did not stretch the way it used to, I felt a familiar cocktail of guilt and duty. We are just drowning. Violet, she said, I am cutting coupons. I am turning the heat down to 60 degrees. Your father is wearing sweaters inside. The image of my father shivering in his own living room was enough to bypass my logic centers. How much? I asked. 2,500. She said, that is all. Just 500 more. That is what? A few nice dinners for you? But for us, it is heat. I did not tell her that I did not go out for nice dinners. I did not tell her that $500 was exactly what I was trying to put away for a new transmission. I just said, okay. I logged in. I changed the number. The temporary nature of the help had evaporated. We never talked about an end date anymore. It was an entitlement now. It was a line item in their budget that they counted on with the same certainty as the sun rising. Grant noticed the pressure before he noticed the math. We were living together by then, in a modest apartment that was fine but small. We were talking about marriage. We were talking about the things couples talk about when they realize they want to grow old together. He came home one evening in late October with a brochure for a trip to Italy. It is the off-season, he said, his eyes bright. Flights are cheap. We could do 10 days. Rome, Florence, maybe a train down to the coast. You have the vacation days. Violet, you have not taken a real break in 3 years. I looked at the brochure. The water in the photos was an impossible shade of blue. I wanted to go. I wanted to drink wine in a piazza and forget that my phone existed. Then I did the mental calculation. The trip would cost roughly $3,000 per person. That was 1 month of parents plus a little extra. If I went, I would dip into my emergency fund, which was already dangerously low because I had covered a surprise dental bill for Blair 2 months prior. I cannot, I said, turning back to the stove so he would not see my face. Grant put the brochure down. The joy evaporated from the room. Why? He asked. And do not tell me it is work. I know your project schedule. You are clear in November. It is just not a good time financially. I lied. Grant leaned against the counter. He crossed his arms. Violet, we make good money. Combined. We are in the top bracket. We live in a cheap apartment. We drive old cars. We do not have kids yet. If we cannot afford a discounted trip to Italy now, when can we? I stirred the pasta sauce, my hand moving in a frantic circle. I just have expenses. Grant? Student loans? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question I had been dreading. Can I see them? What? The loans? Can I see the statements? Maybe we can refinance them. I can help you look at the interest rates. It does not make sense that they are draining you this hard. My heart hammered against my ribs. I turned around and tried to laugh, but it came out sounding sharp and brittle. I am handling it. Grant, I do not need a financial advisor. I need a boyfriend who trusts me to manage my own debt. Grant recoiled, as if I had slapped him. The hurt on his face was immediate and deep. I am not trying to control you, he said softly. I am trying to understand why we are living like we are broke when we are not. I did not answer. I could not answer, because the truth was too humiliating. The truth was that I was not broke. I was being robbed. And I was holding the door open for the thieves. We did not go to Italy. We stayed home, and I sent the transfer on the 1st of the month. And Janice sent me a text with a heart emoji. That was the trade. Italy for a heart emoji. The isolation deepened at the family gatherings. Christmas that year was at my parents' house, the house I was paying for. I arrived early to help cook, as usual. I brought the ham, the wine, and the pies. I had spent $400 at the grocery store that morning. Janice was in the kitchen, but she was not cooking. She was arranging a cheese board. Oh, put those in the oven. Honey, she said, gesturing to the ham without looking at me. Blair will be down in a minute. She was up late last night working on her portfolio. Blair was 24 now. She had graduated college, a degree I had helped pay for, and was now pursuing a career as a lifestyle consultant, which as far as I could tell meant she posted photos of coffee cups and organized people's closets for free. When Blair finally descended the stairs, it was an event. She was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a new iPhone. Janice clapped her hands. Look at her. Janice beamed. Just look at that glow. That is the look of a girl who is going places. Blair hugged me loosely. Hey, Vi, you look tired. Working hard? I am fine. I said, wrestling a 20-pound ham into the oven. Dinner was a performance art piece where Blair was the muse and I was the stagehand. Janice spent the entire meal recounting Blair's minor victories. Blair had gained 1,000 followers. Blair had a potential client in the city. Blair was thinking about starting a podcast. We are just so proud of her creative spirit, Janice said, pouring more of the wine I had bought. She is brave. She takes risks. Not everyone has that courage. She looked at me when she said it. The implication was clear. I was the corporate drone. I was the safe, boring compliance analyst who sat in a gray office and pushed paper. I had no courage. I just had a checkbook. Then Aunt Marge, my father's sister, turned to me. She was a kind woman, but she only knew what she was told. We miss you at the summer barbecues. Violet, Marge said, your mother says you are always too busy working. It is a shame. You should not let your career take over your whole life. Family is important. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Too busy. I looked at Janice. She was studiously cutting a piece of ham. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and slam my hands on the table. I wanted to say, I am not at the barbecues because I'm working overtime to pay for the steaks you are eating. I am not cold. I am exhausted. But I looked at my father. Dale was eating quietly. His eyes focused on his plate. He looked older. He looked fragile. If I caused a scene, it would upset him. It would stress him out. I forced a smile that felt like a grimace. You know how it is. Aunt Marge, I said, the deadlines are intense. Janice looked up then, and she gave me a small, tight smile. It was a smile of approval. I had played my part. I had protected the narrative. I am just glad we have one daughter who can handle the pressure, Janice said, patting my hand. Violet is our rock. She does not need the spotlight. Do you, honey? I felt like an accessory. I felt like the wallet she carried in her purse. Necessary, functional, but kept out of sight until it was time to pay. 2 days later, my phone rang at work. I checked the caller ID, expecting Grant or a client. It was Everett Parker, my grandfather. I stared at the screen. I had not spoken to Grandpa Everett in over a year. Janice always acted as a filter between us. She told me he was getting difficult. She told me he was grumpy and did not like to be bothered. She told me he was slipping. I picked up. Hello? Violet? His voice was deep and gravelly. It sounded like old wood and tobacco. Hi, Grandpa, I said. Surprised? Is everything okay? I am sitting here looking at a calendar, he said. He did not waste time with pleasantries. I realized I have not seen my eldest granddaughter in 6 months. Your mother says you are working yourself to death. I felt the familiar defensive script rise in my throat. I am just busy, Grandpa. It is a busy time of year. There was silence on the line. It was not an empty silence. It was a listening silence. Grandpa Everett had run a construction business for 40 years. He knew the difference between a load-bearing wall and a facade. He cleared his throat. Violet, I want to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Do not give me the polite answer. Okay, I said, my stomach tightening. Are you being taken care of? The question hung in the air, bizarre and piercing. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, are you okay? Are you building a life? Or are you just keeping things afloat? My heart started to race. Did he know? How could he know? Janice kept the finances locked down tight. She would never tell him she was taking money from me. He was old school. He believed a man provided for his family. If he knew Dale was living on his daughter's paycheck, he would be furious. But if I told him, I would blow everything up. I would humiliate my father. I would destroy the fragile peace I had bought. I am fine. Grandpa, I lied. The words tasted like sour milk. Everyone is fine. Grant and I are doing great. Work is good. He did not speak immediately. I could hear him breathing. I could almost see him, sitting in his leather armchair, staring out the window at his bird feeder, holding the phone with his scarred, capable hands. He did not believe me. I could feel it across the connection. You sound tired. Violet, he said finally. It is a long week. Listen to me, he said. His voice dropped an octave. It became softer, but more intense. If that ever changes, if you ever feel like you are not fine, if you ever feel like the water is getting too high, you call me. I gripped the phone. I will. Grandpa. I mean it, he said. Even if it is uncomfortable, even if you think I will be angry, you call me. I am not as out of the loop as people think. He hung up. I sat there in my office, listening to the dial tone. He knew something, or he suspected something. He had thrown me a rope. All I had to do was grab it. All I had to do was say, "No, Grandpa, I am drowning. They are eating me alive." But I was too trained. I was too conditioned. I was the rock. I was the good daughter. I put the phone down. I wiped a single tear from my cheek before my coworker walked past my door. I told myself I would call him someday. I told myself that once I got them stable, once Janice stopped asking, once the crisis was over, I would go visit him and we would talk. I did not know there was no once. I did not know that the crisis was the design. I opened my email. There was a notification from the bank. Transfer complete. $2,500. I deleted the email. I went back to work. I kept digging the hole, shovel by shovel, convincing myself I was building a foundation. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in April. I was 33 years old. The stick turned pink before I even set it down on the bathroom counter. It was instantaneous. There was no ambiguity, no squinting at a faint line. It was bold, dark, and undeniable. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at my knees. I expected to feel joy. I expected to feel that cinematic rush of excitement that Blair always posted about whenever she got a new puppy or a new boyfriend. But what I felt was a sudden, terrifying clarity. It was as if my body, now hosting a second heartbeat, had suddenly developed an intolerance for lies. For nearly a decade, I had been able to rationalize the drain on my finances. I had told myself it was temporary. I had told myself it was duty. I had told myself that Grant and I could absorb the blow because it was just us. We could eat cheaper food. We could drive older cars. We could wait. But as my hand drifted down to my flat stomach, I realized I could not wait anymore. I was not just keeping myself afloat. I was now responsible for a life that had no choice in the matter. Every dollar I sent to my parents was a dollar I was stealing from this child. Grant found me there 20 minutes later. He saw the test on the counter. He saw the look on my face. He fell to his knees and wrapped his arms around my waist, burying his face in my stomach. He was crying happy tears. He was talking about painting a nursery. He was talking about names. I was thinking about the first of the month. 2 weeks later, the morning sickness hit, and so did the reality check. Grant came into the living room on a Saturday morning. He did not have coffee. He had his laptop. He looked grim. He looked like he had not slept. "Violet, we need to talk," he said. "Not about the baby, about the math." He set the laptop on the coffee table. He had built a spreadsheet. It was not a simple list of transactions. It was a forensic accounting of my life since I was 25. He had gone back through our joint records, my old statements, and every emergency request I had verbally told him about. He had color-coded it. Red was the monthly transfer. Orange was the emergencies. And in a column next to it, he had pasted screenshots from my mother's and sister's social media accounts, matched by date. "Look at this," Grant said, his voice steady but hard. He pointed to a date 3 years prior. Transfer, $1,200. Reason, Dad's medication isn't covered. Social media post, same week. Blair checking in at a luxury music festival. VIP wristbands visible. He scrolled down. Transfer, $800. Reason, furnace repair. Social media post, 3 days later. Mom posting a photo of a new designer stand mixer and a set of copper pots. Caption, treating myself. He scrolled to the bottom. There was a bold number in the final cell. It was staggering, $242,000. I stared at the number. The breath left my lungs. "That is a house, Violet," Grant said softly. That is a fully paid for 4-year degree for our child. That is our retirement. That is not help. That is theft. I tried to look away, but he would not let me. They are lying to you, he said. They have been lying to you for almost a decade. They are not poor. They are parasites. And now, we have a baby coming. We cannot afford to support 4 adults on 2 salaries. I felt the defensive reflex kick in, the old script Janice had installed in my brain. But it was weaker this time. It crumbled under the weight of that number. $242,000. I have to call them, I whispered. You have to cut them off. Grant corrected. I can't just cut them off, I said, panic rising in my throat. If I stop paying the mortgage, they lose the house. Dad loses his home. I can't do that to him. Grant looked at me with a mixture of frustration and sadness. Then reduce it, he said. Tell them we are having a baby. Tell them things have changed. See how they react. That will tell you everything you need to know. I picked up the phone. My hands were sweating. I waited until Grant went to the kitchen to make tea. I needed to do this alone. I needed to manage the blast radius. I dialed the landline. Janice answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? She sounded out of breath. I could hear the television in the background. Hi, Mom, I said. Oh, Violet, did you remember the transfer is due on Tuesday? I was going to remind you, the car needs new tires. So if you could add maybe 300 extra, that would be a lifesaver. She did not ask how I was. She did not ask why I was calling on a Saturday morning. She opened with the invoice. Mom, I have news, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. Oh? I am pregnant. There was a pause, a long, stretching silence. Well, she said finally. Her tone was flat. That is big news. I waited for the congratulations. I waited for the squeal of delight. Are you keeping it? She asked. The question hit me like a slap. Of course I'm keeping it. Mom, Grant and I are thrilled. Right, she said. Well, babies are expensive. Violet, that is actually what I wanted to talk about, I said, clutching the fabric of the sofa cushion. Because of the baby, because I will be going on maternity leave eventually, and we need to set up a nursery. We need to adjust the budget. Adjust the budget? Her voice dropped 10 degrees. I cannot send the full 2,500 anymore. I said, the words rushed out. I can send 1,000, just to help with the mortgage basics. But I need to start saving for my own family now. The silence on the other end was not empty. It was icy. It was a weaponized silence that I had known since childhood. It was the silence that meant I had been bad. I waited. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might hurt the baby. After everything we sacrificed for you? Her voice was low, trembling with a manufactured rage. Excuse me? I asked. We raised you. Violet. We gave up everything. We put food in your mouth. We put clothes on your back. We paid for your piano lessons. We sacrificed our own comfort so you could have a career. And now that you have made it, you are going to nickel and dime your own parents? I wasn't nickel and diming them. I had given them $250,000. Mom, I am not cutting you off. I am just saying I need to prioritize. You are being selfish. She snapped. You are thinking only of yourself. Do you think I wanted to spend my life worrying about bills? I did it for you. And this is how you repay us? By abandoning us the moment you get knocked up? The cruelty of the phrasing, knocked up, stung tears into my eyes. Mom, please, I said, I am just asking you to understand. Maybe we should let her. It was my father's voice. It was faint, coming from somewhere in the background. He must have been listening. Shut up. Dale! Janice hissed away from the receiver. The line went quiet again, save for Janice's heavy breathing. My father had tried. He had tried to say maybe we should let her keep her money. He had tried to be a father, and she had snapped him shut like a book, and he had let her. That was the moment the fear changed, for years. My fear had been about losing their love. I was afraid that if I stopped paying, they would stop loving me. But as I sat there, pregnant and weeping, listening to my mother berate me for wanting to buy diapers instead of funding her patio furniture, I realized something much worse. I wasn't going to lose their love. I never had it. Love does not demand a ransom. Love does not look at a grandchild and see a competitor for resources. Love does not silence a husband who wants to do the right thing. They did not love me. They loved the transaction. I was an asset. And assets are not allowed to depreciate. Grant walked back into the room. He saw my face. He saw the way I was curled around my stomach. He took the phone from my hand. He did not speak to her. He just hung up. He sat down beside me and pulled me into his chest. I cried until my shirt was soaked. I cried for the parents I wanted, and I cried for the parents I had. Later that night, we were lying in bed. The room was dark. Grant reached out and placed his hand on my stomach. "Violet?" he said softly. "Yeah?" "If you keep paying them," he said, his voice cutting through the dark. "If you keep showing Maisie that love means letting people hurt you, what is she going to learn about love?" The question lodged in my chest like a shard of glass. What would she learn? She would learn that boundaries are rude. She would learn that you have to buy your place at the table. She would learn that being a good daughter means setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. I did not want her to learn that. I wanted her to learn that she was valuable just because she existed, but habits are deep, and fear is heavy. I did not cancel the transfer. The next day, Janice sent a text. It was not an apology. It was a picture of my father looking sad. Sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, he is so worried about the future. The caption read, "I don't know if his heart can take the stress." It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. But the hook was still in my mouth. I texted back, "I will make it work. Do not worry." I logged into the bank. I left the transfer at $2,500. But then, I did something I had never done before. I opened a new folder on my laptop. I password protected it. I named it Evidence. I went to the banking app and downloaded every statement from the last 9 years. I went to Janice's Facebook page and started taking screenshots. Every vacation, every new outfit, every dinner check-in. I went to Blair's Instagram and archived her stories. The festivals, the bags, the brunches. I was still paying the ransom, but I was no longer blindfolded. I was building a map of the kidnapping. I touched my stomach. "I am sorry." I whispered to the tiny cluster of cells inside me. "I am not strong enough to stop them yet. But I promise you, I am getting there. I am building the shield." I did not reduce the money. I let them think they had won. I let Janice believe that her guilt trip had worked, that I was back in line, that the ATM was fixed. But as I saved the files, dragging document after document into the folder, I felt a cold, hard resolve forming in my gut. It was the only inheritance I had left to give my daughter. I would pay them, but I would make sure that when the end finally came, I would have the receipts. The rain that night was not just rain. It was a curtain of gray steel slamming against the windshield. I was 37 weeks pregnant. My ankles were swollen to the point where my shoes felt like vices, and my lower back was a knot of dull, throbbing ache. I had stayed late at the office to finish a compliance audit because I wanted everything perfect before I went on leave. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be reliable. I turned onto the intersection of 4th and Main. The light was green. I remember that vividly. It was a solid, reassuring green circle cutting through the downpour. I was thinking about the water heater. It was making a noise again, and I was mentally calculating if I could afford a repairman this month after the transfer to my parents went through. I was thinking about a hot shower. I was thinking about Grant, who was in Chicago, and how much I missed the smell of his t-shirts. I did not see the truck. I felt it. The impact was not a noise. It was a physical reconfiguration of my world. The side of my car ceased to exist. Metal screamed, a high, tearing sound that sounded like a wounded animal. The world spun violently. Glass shattered, raining down on me like diamonds. The airbag deployed with a punch that knocked the air out of my lungs, followed by the acrid smell of chemical dust. Then, silence. The rain drummed on the roof, but it sounded miles away. I tried to move my hand to touch my stomach, but my arm wouldn't obey. I looked down. There was blood, a lot of it, and a terrifying, unnatural pressure in my abdomen. My baby. I tried to say, but no sound came out. Then came the lights, blue and red, flashing against the wet pavement, fracturing in the raindrops. Voices, clipped, urgent, professional. Female driver, pinned, 37 weeks pregnant, obvious fetal distress. Get the jaws. Stay with me. Ma'am, stay with me. The world blurred into a mosaic of pain and noise, the sound of metal being cut, the sensation of being lifted, the rattle of a gurney. And through it all, one single, screaming thought: save her. Please, just save her. 800 miles away. Grant was in a hotel room in Chicago, ironing a shirt for the next day's conference. His phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. He answered, expecting a robocall. Mr. Parker? This is Officer Miller with the Ridgewell Police Department. Grant dropped the iron. There has been an accident. Your wife is at Ridgewell Medical Center. She is critical. They are taking her into emergency surgery now. They have to deliver the baby immediately. Grant's world stopped. He fell onto the hotel bed, his legs giving out. Is she alive? She is alive, sir. But you need to get here. Grant scrambled. He threw things into his bag. He checked flights. Cancelled due to weather. Delayed. No seats available until 6 a.m. He was trapped. He ran to the rental car desk in the lobby. His hands shaking so hard he dropped his credit card twice. He got a car. He started driving into the storm, gripping the wheel, screaming into the empty vehicle. But he knew he couldn't get there in time. He knew his daughter was about to be born, terrified and traumatic, into a room of strangers. He knew his wife was being cut open alone. He needed someone. He needed family. He dialed Janice. The phone rang 4 times. Grant prayed, please pick up. Please, for once. Just be a mother. Hello? Janice's voice was loud, cheerful. In the background, Grant could hear music, a saxophone, laughter, the clink of silverware. Janice! Grant yelled over the noise of the road and the background din. Janice, listen to me. Grant? She sounded surprised, maybe a little tipsy. Why are you shouting? We are at the Azure. The jazz trio is fantastic tonight. You should hear this sax player. Grant felt a surge of bile. Janice. Violet was in a car accident. A truck hit her. She is at Ridgewell. She is in surgery right now. They are taking the baby out. It is an emergency C-section. The line went quiet for a second, but the background music didn't stop. It just kept playing its upbeat, jazzy tune. Oh my God, Janice said, but she didn't sound horrified. She sounded inconvenienced. Is she okay? I don't know, Grant screamed. They said she is critical. I am in Chicago. I cannot get there for 10 hours. Janice, you are 15 minutes away. You need to go. You need to go right now. Please, go sit with the baby. Go wait for Violet. Do not let them be alone. There was a pause. Grant heard Janice cover the mouthpiece, but he could still hear the muffled conversation. It's Grant. Violet crashed her car. She's in the hospital. Then he heard Dale's voice, faint but clear. Is it bad? Should we go? Then Janice, sharper now. We just got our appetizers. Dale, and I have that drink coming. She came back on the line. Grant, honey, listen, we are in the middle of dinner with the Hendersons. We have not seen them in months. If we leave now, it will be so rude. Grant drove the car onto the shoulder because he couldn't see the road through his tears of rage. Rude? Are you kidding me? Your daughter might be dying. Your granddaughter is being born right now. Janice sighed, a long, exasperated sigh. Violet always has these disasters. Grant, she is so dramatic. Remember when she thought she had appendicitis and it was just gas? She is probably fine. Blair never puts people through this kind of stress. Blair is so low maintenance. Grant stared at the dashboard. Blair never puts people through this. Violet was being T-boned by a truck, and her mother was comparing her to her sister as if getting hit by a vehicle was a character flaw. I am begging you, Grant whispered. Please, just go. Look, we will finish up here. Janice said, her voice taking on that tone of a parent managing a toddler. "We will swing by in a few hours once we know she is actually hurt and not just panicking, okay? Keep us posted." She hung up. Grant sat in the silent car, the rain hammering the roof. He looked at the phone. He had heard Dale. Dale had been there. Dale had known. And Dale had said nothing. He had let her hang up. He had chosen the appetizers over his dying daughter. Grant realized then that Violet was an orphan. She had parents on paper, but in reality, she was completely, devastatingly alone. Except Grant remembered a story Violet had told him once, about a phone call, about an old man who asked if she was being taken care of. Grant scrolled through his contacts. He didn't have the number. He went to Google, Everett Parker Construction. He found a landline. It was 10 p.m. An old man would be asleep. Grant dialed anyway. It rang once, twice. Parker Residence. The voice was gruff. "Alert." "Sir," Grant said, his voice breaking. "This is Grant, Violet's husband." There was a beat of silence. Then, a shift in tone. Sharp, immediate. "What is wrong? Son?" Grant started to cry. He couldn't help it. The rejection from Janice had broken something inside him, and the steadiness of this stranger's voice was the only thing holding him together. Violet was in a crash. "She is at Ridgewell. Emergency surgery. The baby is coming now. I am stuck in Chicago. I can't get there." "Where are her parents?" Everett asked. The question was like a whip crack. "I called them," Grant choked out. "They are at dinner. They said they are busy. They said they will come later." The silence on the other end was terrifying. It was the silence of a man who is deciding which building to demolish. Grant took a breath. "Sir, I think they are going to let your great-granddaughter sit alone in the NICU. I think Violet is going to wake up alone." Everett did not hesitate. "What is the room number?" "I don't know yet. Just the NICU. Ridgewell Medical Center. I am 20 minutes out." Everett said, "I will be there in 15. Drive safe. Son, do not kill yourself trying to get here." "I have the watch." The line clicked dead. Grant lowered the phone. He wiped his face. He put the car back in gear and pulled onto the highway. He was still terrified. He was still angry. But for the first time in the last hour, he wasn't hopeless. Someone was coming. Someone who didn't care about appetizers. Someone who understood that family wasn't a word you said at parties. It was showing up when the rain was falling and the blood was on the floor. Grant drove into the dark, whispering a thank you to a man he had only met twice, praying that the old truck would make it to the hospital before the loneliness broke his wife's heart completely. The first thing that returned to me was the pain. It was not a dull ache or a soreness. It was a sharp, screaming line of fire across my lower abdomen that felt like I was being pulled apart at the seams. I opened my eyes, and the fluorescent lights of the hospital room assaulted me. They were too bright, too sterile, buzzing with a low frequency that seemed to vibrate against my skull. I blinked, trying to clear the fog of anesthesia, trying to remember why I was staring at a ceiling tile with a water stain shaped like a boot. Then, the memory hit me. The rain, the truck, the steering wheel crushing into me. My hands flew down to my stomach. It was gone. The hard, round curve I had lived with for months, the safe harbor where my daughter had been kicking just hours ago, was gone. My belly was soft, bandaged, and terrifyingly empty. Panic seized my throat. I tried to sit up, but my body screamed in protest, and a machine next to me started beeping frantically. "Easy," a voice said. "Easy, Violet. You are okay." I turned my head. A nurse was there, adjusting a line in my arm. She looked tired, her eyes sympathetic in a way that scared me. "Where is she?" I rasped. My voice sounded like it had been dragged through gravel. "Where is my baby?" "She is alive," the nurse said quickly, putting a hand on my shoulder. "She is in the NICU. She is stable. She is small. But she is strong. Alive." The word was a lifeline. I grabbed onto it and held it tight. "I want to see her." I said, "Soon." The nurse promised. "We need to get your pain managed first. You lost a lot of blood." I looked around the room. It was small and gray. There was a clock on the wall ticking loudly. It was 3 in the morning. "Is my husband here?" I asked. "He is on his way." The nurse said, "The weather is bad. He has been calling every hour. He is driving from Chicago." I nodded, closing my eyes. Grant was coming. Grant would be here. But then, a darker question surfaced, a question I was afraid to ask because I already knew the answer in my gut. "My parents?" I whispered. "Did my parents come?" The room went silent. The nurse stopped adjusting the IV. She looked at the monitor. She looked at the door. She looked everywhere but at me. "No, honey," she said softly. "No one is here." I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They lived 15 minutes away. 15 minutes. I had been in surgery for hours. "But maybe they are with the baby," I said, clinging to a shred of hope. "Maybe they are in the NICU." The nurse hesitated. She bit her lip. "I can check again," she said, "but the last time we called well." There was no answer. The door pushed open then, and a woman I did not know walked in. She was wearing lavender scrubs and holding a tablet. She looked soft, motherly, the kind of woman who smelled like vanilla and patience. "Hi, Violet," she said gently. "I am Tessa. Tessa Lane." "Who are you?" I asked. "I am a NICU cuddler," she said. "I am a support aide." I stared at her. I did not understand. "The hospital called me in a few hours ago," Tessa explained, stepping closer to the bed. "When a baby is in the NICU, and the parents when the family cannot be there immediately, they call us. We sit with the babies. We hold them. We talk to them so they know they are not alone." She smiled, and it was a genuine, warm smile. "I just wanted you to know that I have been with Maisie for the last 4 hours. She has a full head of dark hair, Violet, and she has quite the grip." I held her hand while the respiratory therapist got her settled. She was never alone, not for a second. I looked at this stranger, this woman who had left her own bed in the middle of a storm to hold my daughter's hand because my own mother couldn't be bothered to leave a restaurant. "Thank you," I whispered, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. "Thank you." Tessa patted my arm. "That is what I do. Now you rest. She is safe." When Tessa left, the reality of it crashed down on me. They had called a stranger. The hospital staff had looked at the situation. A critical mother, an absent father, and local grandparents who refused to show up. And they had activated a contingency plan for abandoned children. My daughter had been classified as abandoned. I reached for the bedside table. My arm shook violently, the muscles weak and trembling. But I managed to grab my phone. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass over the display, but it still worked. I unlocked it. There were dozens of texts from Grant. "I am driving. I am 2 hours away. I love you. Hold on." There was nothing from Janice, nothing from Dale. I opened Instagram. My thumb moved automatically, a muscle memory honed by years of checking to see what my money had bought them this week. The first story on my feed was from Blair. It was time-stamped 5 hours ago. That would have been roughly 10 o'clock at night, the exact time I was being wheeled into the operating room, the exact time the doctors were cutting through my abdominal wall to save Maisie. I tapped the screen. The video played. It was loud. Jazz music, laughter. The camera panned across a table laden with food, calamari, steak tartare, bottles of wine, and there was Janice. She was holding a martini glass, the condensation dripping down her manicured fingers. She was wearing the pearl earrings I had bought her for her 60th birthday. She was throwing her head back, laughing at something the person next to her had said. The caption was written in Blair's bubbly, oblivious font, "Living our best lives. Family night at the Azure." I watched it again, and again. I watched my mother laugh while I bled. I watched my father eat steak while his granddaughter fought for breath in a plastic box. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't their phones dead. They weren't sick. They were having fun. And they knew. Grant had called them. The nurse had called them. They knew I was dying. And they decided that their appetizers were more important. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, final sound, like a dead branch breaking off a tree in winter. For 9 years, I had been afraid of upsetting them, afraid of being selfish, afraid of losing the only family I had. But looking at that video, I realized I didn't have a family. I had a payroll. I closed Instagram. I opened my banking app. Face ID scanned my battered, swollen face and let me in. I navigated to the Transfers tab. There it was, the recurring payment, scheduled for the 1st of the month, which was 2 days away. Transfer to Mom, Dad, mortgage support. Amount, $2,500. I looked at the number. That was the price of my slavery. That was the cost of the lie. My thumb hovered over the transaction. My heart hammered against my ribs, triggering a spasm of pain in my chest, but I ignored it. I felt a surge of old fear, the voice of Janice in my head screaming, "How could you? We will lose the house. Let them lose the house," a new voice said. It was my voice. It was a mother's voice. I tapped Cancel Recurring Transfer. A box popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this series?" I looked at the picture of the martini glass in my mind. I tapped Yes. Transfer canceled. I didn't stop there. I went to the emergency fund sub-account I had set up for them, the one Janice had access to for medical crises. It had $4,000 in it. I transferred every cent back to my primary checking account. I went to the credit card I had added Blair to as an authorized user for gas and groceries. I removed her, card deactivated. I went to the auto insurance policy I paid for. Cancel policy. I sat there in the hospital bed, tapping the screen, dismantling the financial architecture of my parents' lives. With every tap, I expected to feel guilt. I expected to feel the crushing weight of being a bad daughter, but I didn't. I felt lighter. I felt clean. It was a strange, cold calm. It was the feeling of walking out of a prison cell and realizing the door had been unlocked the whole time. I put the phone down. My hands were still shaking, but they were steady enough. I lay back against the pillows and stared at the ceiling. I was in pain. I was exhausted. I was terrified for my daughter. But for the first time in 9 years, I was free. An hour later, the door burst open. It was Grant. He looked like he had walked through a hurricane. His clothes were rumpled. His hair was wet and plastered to his forehead, and his eyes were wild with exhaustion and fear. "Violet." He rushed to the bed. He didn't care about the tubes or the wires. He buried his face in my neck and sobbed. He shook with the force of it, a deep, guttural release of 12 hours of terror. I held him with my one good arm. I stroked his wet hair. "I am here," I whispered. "I am here. Grant, we are okay." He pulled back, his hands cupping my face. He looked at my bruises. He looked at the bandage on my stomach. "I am so sorry," he choked out. "I am so sorry I wasn't here. I drove as fast as I could. The roads were ice. I couldn't get here." "It is okay," I said. "You are here now." He took a breath, trying to steady himself, but his eyes were filled with a dark, simmering rage that I had never seen in him before. "Did they come?" he asked. He knew the answer. He just needed me to confirm it. "No," I said. Grant stood up and paced the small room. He ran a hand through his hair. "I called them. Violet," he said, his voice shaking. "I called them from the car. I told them you were in surgery. I told them Maisie was coming out. I begged them to go to the NICU. He stopped and looked at me, his expression haunted. "Your mother?" She asked if it was really that bad. She said they were at dinner. She said they didn't want to be rude to their friends. I nodded. I saw the post. Grant. I saw the martinis. Grant kicked the trash can in the corner. It made a loud, hollow clang that echoed in the room. "They didn't even hesitate," he said, his voice cracking. "They chose appetizers over Maisie. They chose a party over you dying." He sat down on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. "I am done. Violet," he whispered. "I am so done with them. I don't care if they end up on the street. I will never let them near her. Never. I reached out and took his hand. I already did it, I said softly. He looked up. What? I canceled the transfers. All of them. The mortgage, the insurance, the cards. It is all gone. Grant looked at me. He saw the steel in my eyes. He saw that the woman who had been afraid to say no for a decade was gone, replaced by someone who had survived a crash and a C-section and a betrayal all in one night. Good, he said. Good. There was a soft knock on the doorframe. It was the nurse again. She looked hesitant to interrupt the moment, but she was holding something. Mr. and Mrs. Parker? She asked. Yes, Grant said, wiping his eyes. I know you said no visitors, she said, but there was a gentleman here earlier. An older man. He arrived about 20 minutes after your husband called us initially. My heart skipped a beat. Who? I asked. He didn't want to disturb you while you were still coming out of anesthesia. The nurse explained, and he said he didn't want to crowd the room, but he went down to the NICU window. He stood there for 2 hours just watching the baby. He wouldn't sit down. He just stood guard. She walked over and placed a small, white card on the bedside table. He told me to give you this when you woke up. She said, he said to tell you he is handling the perimeter. I picked up the card. It was a simple, thick business card, high quality, no frills. Everett Parker Construction. I flipped it over. On the back, in handwriting that was shaky but forceful, were 3 words. I am here. I felt my throat tighten. Grant looked at the card. He let out a long, shaky breath. I called him, Grant admitted. When your parents wouldn't come, I didn't know who else to call. I called your grandfather. He came? I asked, staring at the card. He said he was 20 minutes away. Grant said, he must have beaten me here by hours. I traced the letters of his name with my thumb. My parents lived 15 minutes away and couldn't leave a party. My grandfather lived 40 minutes away, was 80 years old, and had driven through a storm to stand guard outside a window so my daughter wouldn't be alone. He is already moving. I whispered. What? Grant asked. Grandpa? I said, looking at the door. He isn't just visiting. He is planning something. He said he is handling the perimeter. I looked at Grant. He knows. I said, he knows what they did. Grant nodded grimly. I think everyone is about to know. I held the card against my chest, right over the place where my heart was beating a new, steady rhythm. Let him in. I told the nurse, if he comes back, you let him in. He is family. The nurse nodded and left. I looked at the window. The storm outside was breaking. The sun was starting to come up, gray and cold, but it was light. I was in pain. I was broke. I was exhausted. But for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who was on my team, and God help anyone who tried to cross us now. The door opened at 10 in the morning, and the air in the room changed instantly. It did not become warmer. It became heavier. Grandpa Everett walked in first. I had not seen him in person for 3 years. He looked older, his skin like crumpled parchment paper, and he moved with a slight hitch in his right hip that spoke of decades climbing scaffolding. But he did not look frail. He looked like a man who had brought the weather in with him. He was wearing his Sunday suit, a charcoal gray wool that smelled of cedar and rain, and under his arm, he carried a thick, expandable manila folder. He walked straight to the side of my bed. He did not look at the machines. He did not look at the IV drip. He looked at my eyes. He took my hand, the one that wasn't bruised from the IV, and squeezed it. His palm was rough, calloused, and impossibly warm. I am here. Violet, he said. His voice was a low rumble, steady as a foundation. Grandpa? I choked out. He nodded, cutting off my apology before it could start. We will talk about why you didn't call me later, right now. We have work to do. He turned and pulled the ugly blue vinyl chair closer to the bed, sitting down with a grunt of exertion. He placed the folder on his lap. He did not open it yet. He just rested his heavy hand on top of it, like he was keeping a wild animal trapped inside. Then, the door opened again. Dale walked in. My father looked like a ghost. His shoulders were slumped forward, his eyes were rimmed with red, and he was wringing a baseball cap in his hands. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who had been dragged behind a horse for a few miles. "Violet," he whispered, stopping 3 feet from the door. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry." I looked at him. I tried to find the pity I usually felt for him, the sense that he was just a victim of Janice's personality, a leaf blown around by her wind, but I couldn't find it. I just saw a man who had been in the car when the decision was made to order appetizers instead of seeing his granddaughter. "Where is she?" I asked. Dale flinched. "She is parking the car. She had to fix her face. She was crying so much." "Violet?" She was hysterical. I looked at Grant. He was standing in the corner, arms crossed, his jaw set so tight I could see the muscle jumping. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The door swung open a third time, and this time, it stayed open. Janice swept in. She was not hysterical. She was a production. She was wearing a trench coat, belted tightly, and oversized sunglasses, which she removed dramatically as she crossed the threshold. Her makeup was fresh, too fresh. The eyeliner was sharp. The lipstick was a perfect, somber shade of mauve. She smelled of expensive perfume and breath mints. "Violet," she wailed, rushing toward the bed. "Oh, my baby, my poor baby." She reached for me, her hands outstretched, fingers manicured to perfection. Grant stepped forward, physically blocking her path. "Do not touch her," Grant said. His voice was low, dangerous. Janice stopped. Looking affronted, she blinked, looking from Grant to me, and then her eyes landed on Grandpa Everett sitting in the chair. She froze. The theatrical concern dropped from her face for a split second, replaced by a flash of genuine terror. It was the look of a child who realizes the principal is sitting in the living room. "Dad?" she said, her voice jumping an octave. "What are you doing here?" "I am visiting my granddaughter," Everett said. He did not stand up. He did not smile, since her parents were too busy to do it last night. Janice flushed a deep, ugly red. She recovered quickly, pivoting to her role as the misunderstood martyr. "Oh, Dad, you don't understand," she said, clutching her chest. "It was a miscommunication. We didn't know how serious it was." Grant was screaming on the phone, and we couldn't hear him over the noise. "And we thought it was just a fender bender. You know how Violet gets anxious." She looked at me, her eyes pleading for me to corroborate her story, to play the game I had played for 34 years. "Tell him, Violet," she urged. "Tell him you panic sometimes." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had birthed me. I almost died. "Mom," I said. My voice was flat. I wasn't anxious. I was bleeding out on an operating table. Janice's mouth opened and closed. "Well, we are here now," she said, as if that fixed the timeline. "We are here, and we are ready to help. I can stay with you for a few weeks. Violet, I can manage the house while you recover. I know you will need help with the baby." She was already planning the invasion. She was already figuring out how to insert herself back into the center of the narrative. "No," Grant said. "Excuse me?" Janice snapped. Turning to him, "I am her mother, and I am her husband," Grant said. "And you are not setting foot in our house." Janice turned to Dale. "Dale, say something. Tell them they are being ridiculous. We are family." Dale looked at his shoes. "I think we should listen to them." Janice scoffed. "This is unbelievable. We rush over here, worried sick, and this is the thanks we get?" Grandpa Everett cleared his throat. It was a loud, rumbling sound that silenced the room. "Sit down." "Janice," he said. "There aren't any more chairs," she said, looking around. I said, "Sit down." She sat on the edge of the radiator cover near the window, looking like a pouting teenager. Grandpa lifted his hand from the folder. He opened it. The sound of the paper sliding against the table was the only noise in the room. "I have been doing some reading," Everett said. He pulled out a stack of papers. They were stapled together. "I stopped by the bank this morning. I have a friend there. And I stopped by your house. Janice, Dale let me in. Janice shot a look of venom at Dale. Dale shrank into himself. I found some interesting discrepancies. Everett continued. He picked up a sheet of paper. Violet, he said, looking at me, how much money do you send your parents every month? Janice jumped in. Dad, that is private. That is between $2,500. I said, plus extras. Grandpa nodded. He put the paper down. That matches the deposits I see here in their joint account. He picked up another piece of paper. This one was a screenshot. It was blurry, but I recognized it. It was a Facebook post from my Aunt Marge. So proud of my sister Janice. The post read, always making ends meet with dignity. Even though her daughter never lifts a finger to help, prayers for the mortgage. I felt the blood drain from my face. What is that? I whispered. Grandpa looked at Janice. You want to tell her? Or should I? Janice looked away, examining her fingernails. Marge sits on a high horse. She muttered, I had to explain why things were tight. I couldn't tell her we were taking money from our child. It's embarrassing. Dad, it makes us look like failures. So you made me look like a villain? I asked, my voice rising. You told the whole family I was cold? That I didn't help you? You have a good job, Janice snapped. You can take the hit to your reputation. You don't live in the neighborhood anymore. Who cares what Marge thinks? I cared. I realized with a sick lurch that every cold shoulder, every snide comment I had received at family reunions for the last decade had been manufactured by my mother. I had paid $200,000 to be the black sheep. Grandpa flipped a page. It gets better, he said. He looked at Dale. Dale, look at me. Dale looked up, his eyes watery. Did you know? Grandpa asked. Did you know how much she was sending? Dale swallowed hard. I knew she helped, he stammered. Janice handles the bills. I just work at the hardware store. I hand over my check. Grandpa slammed his hand on the table. The sound made everyone jump. Do not lie to me, boy, Grandpa roared. His voice filled the room. I saw the tax returns. You signed them. You knew exactly how much money was coming in. You watched your daughter bleed herself dry for 9 years, and you said nothing. Why? Dale started to cry. A weak, sniveling sound. Because it was easier, Dale sobbed. Because if I asked questions, Janice would scream. She would say I wasn't providing enough. She would make my life hell. So I just let it happen. I am sorry. Violet, I am so sorry. He was sorry. But he had traded my financial future for a quiet evening. He had sold me out to buy silence. Janice stood up, smoothing her coat. Okay, fine, she said, her voice shrill. So we took some help. So we weren't perfect. We are family. We can fix this. Violet, honey, we can work out a payment plan. I will talk to Marge. I will fix the rumors. Just let's not blow this out of proportion. We are here for the baby. That is what matters. I looked at her. I saw the desperation in her eyes. It wasn't desperation for me. It was desperation for the status quo. She was trying to hot glue the mask back onto her face. You refused my baby, I said. The words came out cold and hard. What? Janice asked. Last night, I said, Grant called you. You were 15 minutes away. You knew I was in surgery. You knew Maisie was alone, and you refused to come. I told you. You were eating calamari, I screamed. The pain in my abdomen tore. But I didn't care. I saw the video. Mom, I saw you laughing at the azure while I was being cut open. The room went dead silent. Janice paled. She didn't know I had seen the post. That was your choice, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You made a choice. You chose the party. You chose the image. You chose yourself. You have always chosen yourself. Janice looked around the room, looking for an ally. She found none. Grant looked ready to throw her out the window. Dale was weeping into his hands, and Grandpa was watching her with the cold, detached interest of a judge who has already written the sentence. He closed the folder. He tapped the cover with his index finger. There is one thing I still don't understand, he said softly. He looked at Janice. He used a tone I had never heard him use before. It was not the tone of a father speaking to a daughter. It was the tone of an auditor speaking to an embezzler. I did the math. Janice, he said. He used her middle name. He never used her middle name. Janice flinched as if he had thrown a stone at her. Violet sent you roughly $250,000 over 9 years. Grandpa said, I looked at your mortgage statements. You refinanced 3 times. You haven't paid down the principal in a decade. He leaned forward. I looked at your credit card debt. It is high, but it doesn't account for that kind of cash. I looked at the house repairs. You haven't fixed the roof. You haven't fixed the plumbing. Janice started to back away toward the door. Dad, I don't know what you are talking about. Cost of living is… Stop it. Grandpa said. He stood up then. He rose from the chair like a tectonic plate shifting. He was 80 years old, but he towered over her. You have no savings, he said. You have no equity. You have no assets. And you took $250,000 from this girl. He took a step toward her. So I am going to ask you one question, and you are going to answer me before you leave this room. Janice hit the door. She was trembling now. Real fear. Where did the rest of it go? Janice? The question hung in the air like smoke. Janice's eyes darted around the room. She looked at Dale, who had stopped crying and was looking at her with a sudden, dawning horror. Janice? Dale whispered. What does he mean? Janice didn't answer. She looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes. There was only calculation. She was trying to figure out if she could lie her way out of this one, but looking at Grandpa's face, she realized the terrifying truth. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't asking because he didn't know. He was confirming something he had already found. I have to go, Janice stammered. I need air. I feel faint. She turned and fumbled with the door handle, practically falling into the hallway in her haste to escape. The door clicked shut behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dale looked at Grandpa. Dad? He asked, his voice trembling. What did you find? Grandpa didn't answer him. He looked at me. He looked at the tears streaming down my face. He sat back down and placed his heavy hand over mine again. Rest now. Violet, he said gently, the storm is over. We will deal with the wreckage tomorrow. But I knew, as I watched my grandfather's jaw set in a line of granite, that the storm wasn't over. The hurricane had just passed. Now came the flood. It had been 3 weeks since the hospital, and my house had become a fortress of soft noises. The silence that filled our living room now was not the empty, terrifying silence of the NICU, nor was it the loaded, expectant silence of a phone waiting to ring with a demand for money. It was the peaceful, rhythmic silence of a healing home. It was the sound of Maisie breathing in her bassinet. It was the sound of the dishwasher running in the kitchen. It was the sound of Grant turning a page of his book while I nursed our daughter on the sofa. My incision was healing. The angry red line across my lower abdomen had faded to a dull pink, itching only when the weather turned damp, but the scar that had been severed in my mind, the connection to the people who raised me, was still raw, gaping, and unstitched. I had not spoken to them since the hospital room. Grandpa Everett had handled the logistics of their exit that day. I did not know exactly what he had said to get Janice to leave the hallway, but I imagined it involved the same tone he used to condemn unsafe building sites. They had vanished, retreating to the house I was no longer paying for, to sit on the furniture I had bought, presumably to panic, but silence, for Janice, was not a state of being. It was a tactical error she felt compelled to correct. The voicemails started 3 days after we brought Maisie home. First, they were weepy. Violet, honey, I just can't stop crying. I look at your baby pictures and I just sob. How did we get here? Then, they were defensive. Your father is a mess. Violet, he can't sleep. You know how he gets. We are just worried about you. We just want to know the baby is okay. Then, inevitably, they became performative. I knitted a blanket. It is pink. I know you probably don't want it, but I knitted it anyway. A grandmother has to do something. I listened to them on speaker while I folded tiny onesies. Grant wanted to block the number, but I stopped him. I needed to hear the progression. I needed to hear the desperation mounting. It was my weather report. It told me exactly which direction the wind was blowing in her mind. And the wind was blowing toward a settlement. She wanted the status quo back. She wanted the ATM to reboot. I decided to give her one chance. It was not a chance for redemption. I knew, with the clarity of a woman who had almost died, that redemption was not on the table. It was a chance for closure. I needed to look her in the eye one last time, without the fog of anesthesia, and see if there was anything human left behind the calculation. I texted her on a Tuesday. You can come see Maisie on Saturday at 2 o'clock. 1 hour. Just you and Dad. No Blair. No drama. If you mention money, you leave. She replied in seconds. We will be there. Thank you, honey. You won't regret this. Saturday arrived with a sky the color of bruised slate. Grant was on edge. He cleaned the kitchen counters 3 times. He checked the locks. He looked like a man preparing for a siege rather than a family visit. She is going to pull something, Grant said, wringing out a dish towel. You know she is. I know, I said, adjusting Maisie's collar. She was wearing a simple white sleeper. I didn't dress her up. This wasn't a pageant. That is why Grandpa is coming, I added. Grandpa Everett arrived at 1:30. He was 30 minutes early, because he respected time, and he respected the anxiety of new parents. He walked in, hung his coat on the rack, and washed his hands at the kitchen sink for a full 2 minutes before he even looked at the baby. When he finally approached the bassinet, he looked like he was approaching a holy relic. He reached in with one large scarred finger and let Maisie wrap her tiny hand around it. She has a good grip, he said softly. She is a Parker. He sat in the armchair in the corner of the living room. He didn't take the center of the room. He positioned himself like a sentry. He had his folder with him again, though this time he left it inside his satchel by his feet. I want you to know, Grandpa said, looking at me, that I'm not here to referee a fight. I am here to witness the truth. Whatever happens today, Violet, you are the mother. You set the rules. I nodded. Thank you. Grandpa. 2 o'clock came. The doorbell did not ring. 2:10 came. Grant paced the hallway. Typical, he muttered. She can't even give you this. She has to control the time. If she is late, she makes you wait. It is a power move. 2:20. Finally, at 2:25, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. I picked up Maisie, holding her against my chest like a shield. Open it, I said to Grant. Grant opened the door. Janice stood there. She was holding a large, ribbon-wrapped gift box. She was wearing a pastel floral dress that looked more appropriate for an Easter brunch than a somber reconciliation. Dale stood behind her, looking miserable and gray, and behind Dale, looking at her phone, was Blair. My stomach tightened. I had been specific. No Blair. Janice breezed past Grant before he could speak. We made it, she announced, bringing a gust of cold air and perfume into the room. Traffic was a nightmare on the bridge. You know how it is. She stopped when she saw me. She put a hand to her mouth, her eyes welling up with instant, practiced tears. Oh, Violet, look at you. You look tired, but beautiful. And the baby. She reached out. I took a step back. I said no Blair. I stated, my voice calm. Janice froze. She gestured vaguely behind her. Oh, honey, I couldn't leave her at home. She has been so depressed. She just wanted to see her niece. She promised to be quiet. Don't be cruel. Violet, it is a celebration. Blair looked up from her phone. She popped her gum. Hey, Vi, she said. Nice place. Smaller than I thought. Though. I looked at Grant. He looked ready to physically remove them. I shook my head slightly. Come in, I said, but you are late. You have 35 minutes left. Janice's smile faltered, but she recovered. She walked into the living room. Then, she saw Grandpa Everett. He was sitting still as a statue in the corner, watching her. Oh, Janice said, her voice jumping. Dad, I didn't know you were invited. I am always invited. Grandpa said. Janice swallowed. She clutched the gift box tighter. Well, isn't that nice? She said. A full family reunion. She sat on the sofa, patting the space next to her for Dale. Blair wandered over to the window, looking bored, occasionally glancing at Maisie with the same interest one might show a new lamp. Janice spent the first 10 minutes performing grandmotherhood. She cooed at Maisie from a distance. She told stories about when I was a baby, stories that I noticed were all about her. I was in labor for 20 hours with you. I gave up my figure for you. But her eyes kept drifting. Every time she thought I wasn't looking. Her gaze darted to Grandpa Everett. She was tracking him. She was watching his hands, his face, the bag at his feet. She looked like a gambler trying to read the dealer. Grant noticed it too. He was standing by the kitchen door, his arms crossed, his eyes narrowed. He saw the way Janice shifted her weight, the way she kept trying to engage Grandpa in small talk that he flatly ignored. So, Dad, Janice said, her voice high and tight, have you been busy lately? Any new projects? I have been very busy, Grandpa said. Cleaning house? Janice flinched. She laughed nervously. That is good. Spring cleaning is good for the soul. She turned to me. Violet, honey, this is for the baby. She pushed the gift box toward me. I didn't open it. I just set it on the table. Thank you, I said. Aren't you going to open it? She asked. It is the blanket I made. And a few other things. Essentials. I don't need essentials. Mom, I said, I have everything I need. Janice's jaw tightened. She looked at Blair, who was now taking a selfie with the back of Maisie's head in the frame. Blair, honey, put the phone away. Janice hissed. Blair rolled her eyes. I am just posting it to the story. People want to see the baby. No, I said, no photos on social media. Blair scoffed. Relax, Vi. I didn't tag you. God, you are so uptight since you became a mom. Grant stepped forward. Put the phone away. Blair, or leave. Blair dropped the phone into her purse with a dramatic huff. Fine, whatever. The tension in the room was so thick it felt like humidity. It wasn't the warm, chaotic tension of a family gathering. It was the cold, sharp tension of a negotiation gone wrong. I needed water. My throat was dry, parched from the effort of holding back years of screaming. I am going to get a glass of water. I said, Grant, watch Maisie. I handed the baby to Grant. He took her, holding her close, turning his body slightly away from Janice. I walked into the kitchen. It was an open concept layout, but the angle of the refrigerator blocked the view from the living room. I turned on the tap, letting the water run to cover the sound of my breathing. Then, I turned it off. I heard the whispers immediately. They were low, urgent, coming from the hallway near the bathroom where Janice and Blair had ostensibly gone to freshen up a moment after I left the room. You promised, Blair whispered. Her voice was whiny, petulant. You said you would fix it today. Shh, Janice hissed. Keep your voice down. He is right there. Mom, Blair said, just talk to him. You said you could get him to change it back. I can't live on that stipend. Mom, it is pathetic. My car lease is due in 2 weeks. I froze. My hand gripped the cold marble of the counter. Change it back. They weren't talking about me. They were talking about Grandpa. I listened harder. I know, Janice whispered. Her voice was dangerous, a low growl I had never heard before. I know the stakes, Blair, but he is watching me like a hawk. I need an opening. Just cry. Blair suggested, You are good at that. Tell him you are sorry. Tell him Violet is being mean. Just get him to sign the paper. It is not that simple. Janice snapped. He has that folder. He knows about the accounts. So lie. Blair said, Tell him Violet gave it to us as a gift. Tell him he misunderstood. I am trying, Janice said, but Grant is guarding them like a pit bull. I heard the rustle of fabric. Janice was pacing in the small hallway. Just get them out of the room, Janice said. Distract Violet. Spill something. Start a fight. I don't care. You want me to cause a scene? Blair asked. I want you to give me 5 minutes alone with him. Janice said. Her voice dropped to a terrifying, steely resolve. Just give me 5 minutes alone with him. Let me work on him. He is an old man. He loves me. I can twist him back. I just need him away from her influence. I stood in the kitchen, the glass of water forgotten on the counter. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't here for Maisie. They weren't here for me. They weren't even here to ask me for money again. They were here because Grandpa Everett had done something. He had changed something. His will. A trust. Something financial. And they were terrified. They were here to ambush an 80-year-old man in my living room. They were here to manipulate the only person who had actually stood up for me. Let me work on him. It was disgusting. It was predatory. My first instinct was to grab the frying pan from the stove and chase them out of my house. I wanted to scream. I wanted to protect Grandpa. But then, I remembered the folder. I remembered Grandpa's calm, weather-beaten face. I remembered what he had said. I am not here to referee. I am here to witness. He knew. He knew exactly who they were. He didn't need my protection. He needed them to show their cards. He needed them to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they were exactly what he suspected. If I stopped them now, they would claim it was a misunderstanding. They would gaslight us. They would say I was paranoid. But if I let them talk, if I let them trap themselves. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my shirt. I picked up the glass of water. I walked back toward the living room entrance, but I stopped at the threshold where Grant was standing. He looked at me. He saw the look on my face. It wasn't the look of a victim. It was the look of a hunter. What did they say? Grant whispered. I leaned in close to his ear. They want 5 minutes alone with Grandpa. I whispered. They think they can manipulate him into changing his will. They think I am the one poisoning him against them. Grant's eyes went wide. I will throw them out right now. No, I said. I put a hand on his arm. Don't stop them. Grant, Violet, are you crazy? Let them talk. I said, let them think they have the opening. Let them corner him. Why? Because Grandpa isn't the prey, I said, looking at the old man sitting calmly in the armchair. He is the bait. Grant looked at Grandpa, then back at me. He understood. Okay, Grant said. He shifted his stance. Janice and Blair came back into the room. Janice looked refreshed, her mask back in place. Blair looked ready to play her part. Everything okay? Janice asked brightly. I smiled. It was a thin smile, sharp as a blade. Everything is clear. Mom, I said. I sat down next to Grandpa. I saw Janice's eyes light up. She thought I was relaxing. She thought she had won the first round. She didn't know that the bell had just rung, and she was walking straight into a knockout. The atmosphere in my living room had shifted from a tense family reunion to something that felt more like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. The doorbell had rung twice more since my parents arrived, admitting my best friend Sarah and her husband, followed by 2 of Grant's colleagues from the engineering firm. Mike and David. I had invited them for 2 reasons. First, because they genuinely loved us and wanted to see Maisie. Second, because I knew Janice well enough to know that she behaved differently when there was an audience. She was a creature of perception. With witnesses present, she couldn't scream, she couldn't guilt trip, and she couldn't play the victim without risking her carefully curated social mask. Or so I thought. The gathering was polite but stiff. Sarah was holding Maisie, swaying gently near the kitchen island, while Grant poured drinks. Blair was sulking on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, looking like she was being held hostage in a prison that served sparkling water. Janice, however, was on the move. I watched her from the kitchen archway. She was vibrating with nervous energy. She kept glancing at Grandpa Everett, who had not moved from his armchair by the large bay window. He sat there like a monolith, his folder at his feet, sipping black coffee and watching the room with eyes that missed nothing. Janice was waiting for her window. She was waiting for the 5 minutes she had demanded from Blair. She found it when Grant went to the garage to get more ice, and I was distracted by Sarah asking about the feeding schedule. I saw Janice make her move. It was smooth, practiced, and predatory. She walked over to the bay window, effectively boxing Grandpa in between the glass and the high-backed armchair. She leaned in close, putting a hand on his forearm, that gentle, pleading grip she used when she wanted to sell a lie. I took a step forward to intervene, to stop her from harassing him, but then I stopped. I remembered the setup. Grant had been tinkering with our home audio system all morning. We had a high-tech baby monitor, one of those digital ones with crystal-clear audio. Because Maisie was napping in her bassinet earlier. Grant had placed the transmitter unit on the side table near the bay window, right next to where Grandpa was sitting, and he had routed the receiver through the Bluetooth soundbar under the television so we could hear her breathing over the low hum of the dishwasher. He hadn't turned it off. The living room music was playing softly, some generic jazz playlist Janice liked, but the feed from the monitor was still live. Layered underneath it, I watched Janice lean in. She was close to the microphone, very close. I saw her lips move. "Dad, please," she said. Her voice didn't just stay in the corner, it floated out of the soundbar, cutting through the soft jazz. It was a little tinny, but it was perfectly audible. Grant, who had just walked back in with the ice bucket, froze. He looked at me. I looked at him. I signaled him with my eyes. "Do not move." Most of the room hadn't noticed yet. They thought it was just background noise. Janice, unaware that she was speaking into a microphone, lowered her voice to that conspiratorial whisper she used for secrets. But on the monitor, a whisper didn't sound like a whisper. It sounded like a hiss. "You have to listen to me." "Dad," Janice said. Her voice boomed slightly, causing Sarah to look up from the baby in confusion. Violet doesn't understand the big picture. She never has. The room started to quiet down. Mike and David stopped talking about football. They looked at the speakers. Grandpa Everett didn't say anything. He just looked at her. Janice took his silence for submission. She pressed harder. "Look, I know you are angry about the accounts," she said. "I know it looks bad, but you have to look at the equity of the situation. Violet is fine. She has always been fine. She has Grant. She has this big job. She is ruthless. Dad, she saves every penny. She doesn't need the help." I felt a cold flush of heat go up my neck. Ruthless. I was ruthless because I paid her bills? Janice continued, her voice gaining speed and confidence. But Blair? Blair is delicate. She is an artist. She doesn't have a husband to pay for everything. She needs a safety net. If you change the trust to favor Violet, you are sentencing Blair to poverty. You are punishing the one who actually needs you. I saw Sarah's mouth drop open. She looked at me, horror written all over her face. Janice wasn't done. Violet has enough. Dad. She is greedy. She has been holding this money over our heads for years, making us beg for it. Do you know how humiliating that is? To have to ask your own daughter for grocery money? She likes it. She likes the control. The room was now dead silent. The jazz music had stopped. Grant had cut the music feed from his phone, leaving only the raw, crackling audio from the monitor. Janice, still oblivious, thought the silence in the room was just the privacy she had requested. She thought she was winning. "Just sign the amendment, Dad," she pleaded. "Put it back the way it was. Half and half. It is the only fair way. Don't let Violet steal Blair's inheritance just because she is bitter about a car accident." A car accident. She called the moment I almost lost my life being bitter about a car accident. Grandpa Everett finally spoke. His voice was deep, resonant, and because he was sitting right next to the transmitter, it sounded like the voice of God coming through the speakers. "Look behind you." "Janice." Janice frowned. "What?" "Look behind you." Janice turned around. She faced the room. She saw Sarah, clutching Maisie tight, looking at her with pure disgust. She saw Mike and David, staring at the floor, embarrassed to be witnessing such naked moral rot. She saw Grant, looking like he was about to tear the house down with his bare hands. And she saw me. I was standing in the middle of the kitchen archway, holding a glass of water. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I was just watching her. Janice looked confused. She looked at the faces. She didn't understand why everyone was staring. Then, she heard the feedback loop, a high-pitched whine from the speaker as she shifted her position. She looked at the sound bar. She looked at the small white unit on the table next to Grandpa's elbow. The color drained from her face so fast, it looked like a physical blow. She turned a sickly shade of gray. I didn't, she stammered, looking for a place to hide. Blair, who had been scrolling on her phone, realized what had happened. She jumped up from the sofa. "You guys are sick," Blair yelled, her voice shrill. "Spying on us? That is illegal. You don't know the whole story. You are taking it out of context." Grandpa Everett stood up. He picked up the monitor unit and turned it off. The silence that followed was heavy and ringing. "Oh, I think we have the whole story," Grandpa said. He walked into the center of the room. "I think we have had the story for 9 years." Janice tried to pivot. She tried to summon the tears, the victimhood, the role she had played her entire life. "This is a trap," she cried, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You set me up, Violet. You invited us here to humiliate me in front of your friends. You are cruel. You are a cruel, ungrateful daughter." I took a step forward. "I didn't make you say those things." "Mom," I said calmly, "I didn't make you say that I was greedy for paying your mortgage. I didn't make you say that I liked the control. I did it for the family," Janice screamed. "I did it to keep us afloat. And you judge me? You sit there in your nice house with your rich husband and you judge me?" Then, something happened that stopped her cold. Dale stepped forward. My father, who had been sitting on the sofa like a piece of upholstery, stood up. He walked to the center of the room. He looked at Janice. He was shaking. His hands were trembling at his sides, but his head was up. "Stop it, Janice," Dale said. Janice whipped her head around. "Excuse me?" "I said stop it," Dale said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "They heard you. Everyone heard you." He looked at me. His eyes were filled with a lifetime of apology. "It is true," Dale said. "What is true?" Grant asked. Stepping closer, "She has been doing this for years," Dale said. He looked at the floor, then at Grandpa. "She tells everyone Violet is cold. She tells Marge. She tells the cousins. She says Violet is too busy for family. And then she spends the money Violet sends on things." "Things?" Grandpa asked. "Vacations," Dale whispered. "The remodel. The car for Blair. She calls it managing the image. She says we have to look successful so people don't pity us." "Dale," Janice shrieked. "You shut your mouth. You are senile." "I am not senile," Dale shouted back. It was the first time I had ever heard him yell at her. "I am tired. I am tired of lying to my daughter. I am tired of eating appetizers while she is in surgery." He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. I wanted to come. Violet, that night, I wanted to come. She hid the keys. She said it would ruin the dinner. She said you would be fine because you are Teflon. Teflon. I felt a crack in my chest. That was how she saw me. Hard. Artificial. Unbreakable. Not a person. A substance. Janice looked around the room. She had lost the room. She had lost the narrative. She had lost Dale. Her mask didn't just crack. It shattered. She turned on me. Her face twisted into something ugly. Something feral. "You think you are so special." She spat at me. "You think because you made a little money you are better than us? You are nothing without me. I made you. I pushed you. And this is how you repay me? By embarrassing me in front of strangers?" She gestured wildly at Mike and David. "These people don't care about you," she screamed. "They are laughing at you. They are laughing at your white trash family." Grandpa Everett slammed the folder onto the coffee table. The sound was like a gunshot. It stopped Janice mid-sentence. "Enough!" Grandpa roared. He looked at Janice with a gaze so cold it could have frozen the sun. "You want to talk about embarrassment? Janice? You want to talk about shame?" He reached into the folder. He didn't pull out a bank statement this time. He pulled out a legal document. It was thick, bound in blue paper. Since you wanted to discuss inheritance in public, Grandpa said, his voice dropping to a terrifying calm. Since you wanted to lobby for Blair in front of an audience, let's finish the conversation in public. He held up the document. This is the trust. He said, the one you wanted me to change, the one you were just whispering about. Janice stared at the papers. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. I signed the amendment this morning. Grandpa said, before I came here. Janice's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. You did? I did. Grandpa said, he walked over to me. He handed me the document. Read the distribution clause. Violet, he said, out loud. I took the papers. My hands were shaking. I turned to the page he had flagged. Section 4, Distribution of Assets. I cleared my throat. Upon my death, the entirety of the Parker Family Trust, including all real estate holdings, liquid assets, and business interests. I paused. I looked at Janice. She was holding her breath. Shall be placed into a protected trust for the sole benefit of my great-granddaughter, Maisie Parker, with Violet Parker named as the sole trustee. Janice let out a sound that was half gasp, half shriek. What? She screamed. That's everything. I continued reading. Dale Parker shall receive a monthly stipend of $3,000, contingent on proof of separate residence from Janice Parker. Dale looked up, shock washing over his face. Janice Parker and Blair Parker are expressly disinherited from this trust. I stopped reading. I looked at Grandpa. He was looking at Janice. You wanted a safety net? Grandpa said softly. I gave it to the baby because she is the only one in this room who hasn't tried to steal from me. But the house, Janice stammered. Our house. It is in my name, Grandpa said. It has always been in my name. I let you live there. I let you pretend you owned it. He leaned in close to her. You have 30 days. Janice, 30 days for what? She whispered. To get out. Grandpa said, I am selling it. The proceeds go to Maisie. Janice looked at him. She looked at me. She looked at the house she had filled with things she couldn't afford. You can't do that, she hissed. We have rights. You have nothing, Grandpa said, his voice rising again. You have what you earned, which is 0. He picked up his hat from the rack. He looked at Dale. You have a choice, son, Grandpa said. You can stay with her and starve, or you can pack a bag and come with me. I have a guest room. It is quiet, and nobody there will hide your car keys while your daughter is dying. Dale looked at Janice. She was vibrating with rage. She looked like a demon. Then he looked at me. He looked at Maisie. I will get my coat, Dale said. Janice screamed. It was a wordless, primal scream of a woman losing control. Get out, she shrieked at Dale. Get out then. You are all traitors. She turned to Blair. Come on, Blair. We are leaving. We don't need them. We will sue them. We will sue every single one of them. Blair didn't move. She was looking at her phone. She looked up at Janice. Mom, Blair said, her voice flat. You said the trust was $5 million. It is, Janice said, and it is ours. Not anymore, Blair said. She stood up. She grabbed her purse. I am going to Jason's, Blair said. You are coming with me, Janice yelled. No, Blair said. I am not going to be homeless with you. Mom, good luck. Blair walked out the front door. She didn't look at me. She didn't say goodbye. She just followed the money, and the money had just left the building. Janice stood alone in the center of the living room. Everyone was watching her. The friends, the colleagues, the family she had destroyed. She looked at me one last time. You will regret this, she hissed. I looked at her. I felt nothing. No fear, no guilt, no love, just a profound, exhausting relief. I already regret the last 9 years. Mom, I said, I won't regret tomorrow. Get out of my house. Janice turned and ran. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. But the house didn't fall down. It held. Grandpa Everett put a hand on my shoulder. It is done, he said. I looked at Dale, who was standing by the door with his coat. looking like a man who had just woken up from a long coma. I looked at Grant, who was holding me up. I looked at Maisie, sleeping soundly in Sarah's arms, completely unaware that her future had just been secured. "It is done," I whispered, and for the first time in 34 years, I breathed. Janice had her hand on the brass doorknob. She was trembling, her back to us, her silhouette framed by the hallway light like a woman standing on the edge of a cliff. She had screamed her insults. She had threatened to sue. She was leaving, but Grandpa Everett was not done. "Wait," he said. It was not a shout. It was a command. It was the voice of a man who had poured the concrete for the foundation of this family and was now preparing to condemn the building. Janice froze. She did not turn around immediately, I think, deep down. She knew that if she walked out that door right now, she might keep a shred of her delusion intact. But if she turned around, she would lose everything. She turned around. "You are not finished." "Dad?" she hissed, her eyes wild, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You have taken my house. You have turned my husband against me. You have poisoned my daughter. What else could you possibly want?" Grandpa stood in the center of the room. He looked at the folder on the coffee table, the folder that had already dismantled her lies about poverty, and he opened it to the very last page. I stood next to Grant, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I thought the worst was over. I thought the disinheritance was the climax. I was wrong. "There is one thing we need to clear up before you go." "Janice," Grandpa said. He picked up a single sheet of paper. It looked old. The edges were yellowed. "Violet," he said, looking at me, "I want you to answer a question for me. Why did you start sending money 9 years ago?" I swallowed, my throat tight. "Because Mom called me. She said Dad needed tests. She said they were behind on the mortgage. She said if I didn't help, they would lose the house." Grandpa nodded slowly. He looked at Janice. She was pressing her back against the door, her breathing shallow and rapid. "The mortgage," Grandpa repeated. "The crushing weight of the mortgage. That was the story, right?" "Yes," I whispered. Grandpa turned the yellowed paper around so we could all see it. It was a bank document. It was stamped in red ink. The stamp said, "Paid in full." The date on the stamp was 12 years ago. I paid off the mortgage on that house 3 years before you sent your first check. "Violet," Grandpa said. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. I grabbed Grant's arm to steady myself. "What?" I asked. My voice sounded small, like a child's. "I paid it off," Grandpa said, his eyes never leaving Janice. "When Dale lost his job at the factory, I stepped in. I wrote a check for the remaining balance, $140,000. I did it so they would never have to worry about a roof over their heads. I did it so they could save for retirement." He took a step toward Janice. "There was no mortgage, Janice," he said. "There was no bank threatening to take the house. There was no foreclosure notice." I stared at my mother. I felt a physical sickness rising in my gut, a nausea so violent I thought I might faint. For 9 years, I had lost sleep over that mortgage. I had skipped vacations. I had driven a car with no heat. I had denied myself and my husband a life, all to pay a bill that did not exist. "Where did it go?" I whispered. The question came out as a strangled sob. $2,000 a month. $250,000. Where did it go? Janice didn't answer. She couldn't speak. She looked like a trapped animal. "I will tell you where it went," Grandpa said. He flipped to another page in his folder, a spreadsheet with colorful graphs. "It went to the Azure." He said, "It went to the leasing agent for Blair's convertible. It went to the closet full of designer coats I saw in your hallway this morning. It went to the illusion, Violet." He looked at me with infinite sadness. "She wasn't using your money to survive, honey. She was using your money to pretend she was rich. She took your hard work, your sweat, your sacrifice, and she wore it like a costume." I looked at Janice. I saw the patio set. I saw the spa days. I saw the expensive cuts of meat. I saw the girls' nights I was never invited to but always paid for. It wasn't panic money, it was play money. But wait, Grandpa said he wasn't done. The hammer had not fully fallen. That is just theft by deception. He said, that is moral bankruptcy. But this is a crime. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a letter. It was crisp and white, with a legal letterhead. When I was at the house this morning, looking for the trust documents, I found this in your desk. Janice. He held it up. It is a statement for a home equity line of credit. He said, taken out against the house I paid for. Janice let out a whimper. Dad, please. It was opened 2 years ago, Grandpa continued, ignoring her, for $50,000. And do you know whose name is on the cosigner line? He looked at me. Yours, Violet. Me? I gasped. I never signed anything. I know you didn't, Grandpa said, because the signature on this document is dated for a day when you and Grant were in Mexico for your anniversary. I checked the dates. He turned to Janice. His voice dropped to a whisper that was louder than a scream. You forged her signature. Janice, you stole her identity. You put your daughter in $50,000 of debt so you could remodel a kitchen that didn't need remodeling. Grant let out a roar of rage. He lunged forward. But Mike and David held him back. That is fraud, Grant shouted. You are going to jail. Janice slid down the door until she was crouching on the floor, sobbing into her hands. It was a pathetic, ugly sound. I had to, she wailed. We were drowning. We had to keep up appearances. Marge was always judging me. The neighbors were judging me. I just wanted a nice life. You wanted a nice life? I asked, my voice trembling with a cold, hard fury. So you ate mine? I walked over to her. I stood over my mother, the woman who had given me life and then spent 34 years consuming it. You stole my credit. I said, you stole my savings. You stole my peace. And then, when I was bleeding to death, you stole my parents. Janice looked up at me. Her face was a ruin of running makeup and snot. She reached for my hand. Violet, please, she begged. I am your mother. We can fix this. I will pay it back. I swear. I will get a job. Just don't let him sell the house. Don't let him send me to jail. Please, God says to forgive. She was playing the religion card. It was her last ace. Grandpa stepped between us. He looked down at his daughter. God forgives. Janice, Grandpa said, but the law requires restitution, and I am done negotiating with terrorists. He handed the credit line document to Grant. Give this to the police, Grandpa said. No, Janice screamed. Dad, you can't. I am your daughter. You didn't refuse a baby. Janice, Grandpa said. He said the sentence then, the sentence that he had been holding in his chest since the moment he looked through the NICU window and saw his great-granddaughter alone. You didn't refuse a baby. You refused your place in this family. He pointed to the door. The trust is amended. The house goes on the market on Monday. The evidence of the fraud is with Grant. You have nothing left here. Janice looked at Dale. Dale was standing by the coat rack, his bag in his hand. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Maisie. Dale, she screamed. Do something. Dale looked up. He looked at me. He looked at the wreckage of the family he had been too weak to protect. I am doing something, Dale said quietly. I am leaving. He opened the door. He walked out into the cold morning air without looking back. Janice stood up. She looked at me one last time. She tried to summon the anger, the entitlement, the power she had held over me for so long, but it was gone. The wires had been cut. The puppet strings were severed. You will be sorry, she whispered, but it sounded hollow. You will need me one day. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. She wasn't a monster. She was just a small, sad, empty woman who tried to fill her soul with things she couldn't afford. I won't, I said, because Maisie doesn't get raised inside your illusion. I turned my back on her. I walked over to Sarah and took my daughter into my arms. I buried my face in her soft, warm neck. I smelled the milk and the soap and the innocence. I heard the door open. I heard the click of heels on the hardwood. I heard the door close. She was gone. The silence that followed was heavy. But it wasn't empty. It was the silence of a battlefield after the guns have stopped. Grant exhaled a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. He walked over and wrapped his arms around me and Maisie. We stood there, a huddle of three, shaking and crying and breathing. Grandpa Everett sat back down in the armchair. He closed the folder. He looked tired. He looked every minute of his 80 years. I walked over to him, holding Maisie. I sat on the ottoman at his feet. "Grandpa," I said, "thank you." He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "I should have done it sooner," he said gruffly. "I knew she was bad with money. I didn't know she was eating her young. You saved us," I said. He reached out and touched Maisie's cheek. "No," he said. "You saved yourself. Violet, you made the call. You canceled the transfers. All I did was bring the paperwork." He looked at the door where Janice had exited. "Love isn't leverage. Violet," he said softly, "that is the lesson. People who love you don't send you a bill for it." I nodded, the tears falling freely now. "So what do we do now?" I asked. "The house is gone. My parents are gone. It feels quiet." Grandpa smiled. It was a small, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Now," he said, "now you build a life where people show up." He looked at Grant. He looked at Sarah. He looked at Mike and David. He looked at Dale, who was waiting by the car outside. "You fill the house with them," Grandpa said. "You fill it with truth, and you raise this little girl to know that her price was paid the moment she was born. She doesn't owe anyone a damn thing." I looked down at Maisie. She was asleep. She had slept through the screaming, the revelations, the destruction of a dynasty. She was safe. I kissed her forehead. "We will," I promised, and as the sun finally broke through the gray clouds outside the bay window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air of my quiet, honest home, I knew we would. The knot was cut. The debt was canceled. And for the first time in my life, the ledger was balanced. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If Violet's journey resonated with you, or if you've ever had to set a hard boundary to save your own peace, I want to hear about it. Please comment down below with where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And share your thoughts on Grandpa Everett's verdict. Was it too harsh, or was it exactly what Janice deserved? Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories for more dramas like this. Hit that like button to support the channel. And press the hype button so this story can reach even more people who might need to hear it. See you in the next one.